Coming in at number 10 on our list is Duke from SKT. And we have now made it to the top 10 players at Worlds. No longer top 20, it's just the top 10, clearly. But actually, this guy might be a little higher than some expect on the list. I have him at 9. Deficio, you have him at 12, and Spawn, you also have him at 9. So I'll let you start us off for him. I just talked a lot.
All right, cool. So with Duke, I think it's really hard to place just how good Duke is at the moment, because I think that fundamentally he is such a sound top laner. He team fights incredibly well, has a good laning phase, and we saw, in my opinion, what this guy can do in 1v1 situations at MSI, where he was able to take down Looper, then he was able to take down Darshan, you know, who was having a better tournament at that stage, you know, had picked up Maokai. And I really do think that Duke is one of these players that rises to the occasion when the going gets tough. So that's why I had him higher. But at the same time, you know, SKT, not really a top-centric team. He is much more known for his team fighting and map play, so I can see that there might be some arguments to put him lower.
Yeah, that's why I have him lower on my list. I think Duke is on the wrong team. Because Duke is basically the kind of guy who individually 1v1 can rival anyone in the world, like even Smith, in a pure 1v1. The problem for Duke is that, first of all, his jungler doesn't help him, almost no matter who it is, because either he's just dying on his own or he's ganking other lanes. So Duke doesn't get that much help. It's also a team which has 2 of the absolute best carries in the world, so they don't actually need Duke to be a carry as well up in the top lane. And while, yes, actually his most played champion in his professional career is Maokai, then it's not the kind of thing you kind of associate with Duke. Because you look at carries, you look at champions where he can win lane 1v1, but he's the kind of guy on SKT who often has to play like the more supportive style, and then he has to TP bottom lane, he has to play with the team, which is not the Duke style, and that's why, even though he's so gifted 1v1, I actually don't put him higher, because he's on the wrong team.
When I rank him at 9th, I try not to fault him for having Faker and Bang on the team.
Yeah.
Like, they have such tremendous carries, it's hard for his like damage percentage to be really high because these other guys are doing so much. But you speak about his laning phase, like the best CS differential at 10 of all top laners in Korea. Incredibly impressive. Before he was on SKT, he was an exceptional player. And he's transitioned in a really, I think, graceful way onto SKT, even though it hasn't been as hyped as some people were expecting when they lost Marin and brought in Duke. He plays what the team needs. He does exceptionally well in the lane. And overall, that just puts him, like, obviously not the best player in the world, but it definitely gets him into the top 10.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing here. You know, talking bad about Duke is kind of weird because he is so good, but because he has some of those issues, you know, where he plays maybe a different role than what he wanted to on his SKT lineup, I just put him slightly further down. Not him individually, but what he's doing for his team. I actually think, and I'm going to be a little bit crazy here maybe, if you put him on Rocks Tigers and you swap the top laners, I think you could actually argue for Duke being top 3 in the world. I'm going to say top 3 because I want to see it first. I don't want to just throw him up there being
tricky,
number 1.
Because you have to kind of separate the player from their environment, and you can't just say like, oh yeah, if he had everything around him, he'd be perfect. You have to take that into mind in like this subjective list.
Yeah, 100%. I guess the only thing that you can carry across is the fact that his fundamentals haven't changed, and he still has a very good global awareness of League of Legends. And I think that when you are able to make those teleport
isn't that
plays,
one of his... Sorry, I didn't mean to drop down your pen there. He's taking mine.
Thank you.
So angry.
No, I was like, yeah.
You have him at 9, I have him at 12.
Yeah, no, I think that at times he has been criticized for it, but it is something that he has gotten, in my opinion, much better at. And I think that right now he kind of has slipped into that, you know, tank facilitative, big team fighting role incredibly well.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's gotten better. I think it can still get better, and now we're nitpicking because we're obviously in the top 10, you know, in the world. So that's why I feel like it's justified to do. Yeah, he can get better, you know, being a team player. The team doesn't play that much around him. Again, that's why I don't have him higher specifically. I think he could get higher because he is so good individually.
Yeah, so overall, that means we have him at 10th on our list. Deficio has his pen back. Duke, the 2nd best top laner at Worlds, and the 10th ranked player at Worlds for us. Coming in at number 6 is Bang from SKT. We are reaching up pretty high here. These are the super elite at Worlds. Bang is 8th on my list, 6th on Deficio's, and 7th on Spawn's. Plus, we'll have that little Prey Bang discussion where Spawn had him ranked differently, but we'll start with Deficio. You have him the highest.
Yeah, Bang, his biggest weakness or biggest problem is the fact that his team around him has actually not been doing very well. A lot of it comes down to jungle issues, for sure. Bang as an AD carry, however, has just been consistently so good throughout his entire career, and still when SKT is slumping, he's doing extremely well. Summer split, damage per minute, He's the highest of any player in LCK. Any player. This guy, whenever you get to late game team fights, if I could pick 180 carry, I would put in there every single time. And now I know this is where it gets crazy.
We do have an 80 carry rank higher than him on the list.
But I would take Bang. Just due to his experience and the consistency he's shown in so many international tournaments. I am really, really high on him. And I think actually a lot of people kind of undervalue him a little bit because SKT didn't have the greatest split. And like his laning phase is just like, it's kind of okay. Also because Wolf and him together, they're just a kind of standard bottom lane in the laning phase.
I think this guy has been a little historically undervalued because he's in the shadow of Faker, so to speak. But they build so many team compositions around Bang, and I think that speaks to his strengths. Also, if we even look at the most recent international competition, when they were able to win MSI, like, I was talking with COD afterwards, and they were just talking about how insane his Ezreal was. Better than they had ever seen. Like, he was initiating fights on Ezreal, and they couldn't catch him. Like, he has very smart positioning, and he has the right blend of aggression as well as safety in team fights, which is incredibly hard to say. But we have 680 carries in the top 20, and one guy ranked higher than this. We'll get into that when we get to a higher ranked player. But yeah, Bang, I have a lot of very positive things to say about
I think his damage per minute and the fact that he can play these medium range 80 carries like the Ezreal, like the Lucian, to such a high skill ceiling proves how good this guy is. I don't think anyone's going to debate how he approaches team fights. He knows when he can go aggressive. He knows when he needs to play defensive. The laning phase is something I want to hit on because I used to think it was a it was a liability in the fact that you could attack it, not that it was poorer than other teams. If there was an area of the legendary SKT you were going to open up, it was probably the bottom lane laning phase. It's gotten better, actually. I think that Wolf and Bang are starting to get okay in that regard. It's just that the rest of the map, whilst they were trying to fix that problem, got significantly weaker. And I think that right now, SKT as an overall whole is playing through Bang to a good amount of level, and he is putting up the numbers. But as a team, they're not as dominant as they were.
No, I mean, so with Bang, if you had Faker just playing like Lulu support or Lulu mid lane like he used to do, like every game, Bang would just like move even further up the list because he's so good in team fights. I do agree where you attack him is in the laning phase. Guaranteed. I actually think Korean bot lanes haven't been that strong this split, and that's also why him and Wolf have just been doing like fine. I look back at numbers at MSI just from standard laning, so removed all the lane swaps, looked at the numbers for like Bang and Wolf. I see his difference at 10 and 15 minutes. It's like 1 or 2 CS for Bang. It's nothing really major, but he had 12 kills. And it wasn't 12 kills, like, this is before 15 minutes. He had 12 kills. It wasn't 12 kills by killing the lane opponent. It's because SKT would then have, like, a dragon fight down there. They would have a fight around whatever invade they had, and Bang would join instantly and pick up a few kills here and there. Did it multiple times. So this guy in team fights is an absolute monster, and that's what I really like about him.
And it's funny because so many times with these top players, we talk about their weaknesses, but it's actually just how the team sets up the game. They don't need to get ahead in the laning phase because they are incredibly confident that if they are even or slightly ahead when it gets to team fights, Faker, Bang going to be able to take over. So I do agree with the point. I think that, it's just all about perspective. And for what this guy does, which is a team fighting 80 carry on, high mobility, he does incredibly well.
And I think we also have to talk about the 80 carry versus the support, because so often we group these guys together. But in this particular case, we have Bang up at number 6, but we don't have Wolf on our list. And that's not to say that like Wolf is terrible or anything, but he doesn't seem to be in that elite class. He gets cut out too much. He doesn't make as many of the impressive plays, which kind of almost enhances Bang's case, but it also kind of prevents him from being in that top 5, because unless they have that super dominant laning phase where it can really look like he's going super aggressive, he's not going to be in the top 5. But either way, he's in an incredibly elite class.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned all the right points here about why he's not higher on the list. I think if you have a team that plays purely around him, you have a much better laning support next to him, I think Bang goes higher. I think he actually goes up and overtakes the 80 carry we have above him, which of course is Deft.
Yeah, we'll get to Deft in a bit, but for now, Bang, second highest ranked 80 carry on our list, and number 6 overall. Coming in at number 2 on our list is Faker from SKT. All of us have Faker at number 2, and I don't think anyone's disputing whether or not Faker is the best player of all time. Any other player in the top 3, we're just going to heap praise on them over and over again. But I think for Faker in particular, we have to talk about why he's not number 1. What has changed for Faker this year?
Yeah, and it says a lot about Faker as a player and a name that when you put him second overall in the top 20 list, you still have to criticize him and explain why. Because he's used to be number 1, for basically everyone at all time. So I think with Faker, Right now, it's a lot of different things. I don't think there's any like major thing that stands out. First of all, it's a team where a lot of these players up in the top have like fantastic junglers around them or fantastic supports to back them up. Faker doesn't have a fantastic jungler behind him at all. The SKT lineup really struggles on that position. So very often he's actually alone in that mid lane. And Faker, the way he's always played and will always play, is very, very aggressive. He takes trades. He doesn't just sit back. He wants to fight. When he doesn't have a jungler to back him up and the enemy jungler can camp him, you actually see Faker die in the laning phase sometimes when he doesn't have to, give away early kills he doesn't have to. And that is definitely a criticism for Faker. But I want to see this guy, just get a fantastic jungler next to him, and I think he can instantly go back up, and that's the crazy thing about Faker.
And I think it's the smaller things in Faker's game right now as well. You mentioned the early deaths, but there are things like he won't leave lane when he's chunked if he's against a freeze at the moment, because he knows that if he falls behind, the game starts falling out of control for SKT. And in my opinion, he's just trying to reach that little bit too far at the moment. He's getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar. In saying that, the things that this guy does well is like the list just goes forever. And I think that the thing that still stands out for me is when he is in control of a lane, you are completely shut out as an enemy mid laner. You're consistently in kill range of this guy, and it doesn't matter whether he's playing assassin, control mage, supportive style on Lulu. If the wave is on his side of the map, he is so good at controlling that.
Exactly. Faker still is able to run away with games, but I think if we're just kind of justifying his number 2 placement, he didn't win MVP in either of the splits, and there is a player that seems to work better with the team in the current meta and in this current world. So it's like Faker is still an absolutely insane player, and in a sense, we are punishing him because he's not able to work with Blank. Whether that's Blank not necessarily playing the same way, but because Faker is alone, he pushes a little bit too far, and that causes him to make errors with his exceptional skill set.
And that's the thing everyone needs to understand. When we have players this high up on the list, we're looking at so small things that kind of makes the difference between the best player in the world, the second best player, the third best player. A lot of it comes down to, again, how they're set up by their teams. And it will always come down to that because some players will just be set up to carry. They get resources, they get help, they have vision around them, they have everything they need, and they look great. And that's why they, go high on the list. Faker, in this case, despite having, honestly, a great split. If you look at his individual performance, like his numbers are crazy. He's second highest damage per minute in all of LCK. And funny enough, only bang above him right now. Faker is still doing extremely well. He's winning his lane very often, but because of the team, because of the setup, because of the situation with his jungler, he just falls slightly down, but it's also because the guy above him is just perfect, honestly.
So, Faker, number 2 overall on our list, the best ranked mid laner, 2-time world champion, but ranks number 2 on our list. That'll do it for Faker.